Yo, what's good, everyone? JB here, coming with some updates for Warp Drive and Red REM. I have no updates for Pillars currently because I haven't been able to play test in a little while. Um, and I'm trying to figure out a way to use cards over the hex tiles just for the play testing so it's easier to print them because I'm going to go to Vegas in a couple weeks here and see some friends and hopefully play test once or twice some of the games. So that one's still, it feels like it's in a good spot where I want to test it, the movement prediction. But this focus for this video is going to be on Warp Drive and then Red REM, which I haven't talked about Red REM at all on this channel before. I've talked about it in the Discord. There's a little Discord channel for it separated on the server. And it is a dream and nightmare theme game. And the idea is that the sheep that have been in limbo forever, uh, jumping fences for people, meditating to fall asleep, have become aware of their limbo status and limbo state, that they're become aware of that, and then they are breaking free of the dreams and they're entering people's dreams, hunting them, and they're trying to kill people and turn them in and turn the people into sheeps as well. So, for example, here's one of the characters is the adrenaline junkie. They don't have like first names or anything. They just go by what they are as a person in the dream. The sheep will have name like this. You'll a forewarning for this as well. I'm sorry, I need to mention this right away. The nightmare version of these cards of the characters and things is cartoon, and it has cartoon gore to it. So you'll see blood and guts. So if that's something you don't want to see, or if you're watching with a kid and you want to just make sure it's okay for them before you see it, just be warned. You'll see bones and cartoon gore. It still looks a little silly since it's a cartoon, but I just need to warn you about it in case you don't want to look at that. But so just for an example, I'll show you the 6 characters that we have, and then I'll show you we're working on the 13. There's 13 of the sheep that have escaped limbo and are entering these dreams and hunting people. And this is going to be a game as well where there's a hidden person each round that is a sheep hunting the other players. And each round it changes randomly, so you don't get to find out who the sheep is until the end of the round. And there's a few things that you do. You're basically going through these 4 dream states, and you have numbers 1 through 5 on your hand, and you shuffle a deck of 60 cards that has 6 different dreams that also are numbered 1 through 5. And then they're placed in 5 card dreams into 4 sections. So there's still going to be 10 cards left over. And then there'll be uh, a randomized, after you shuffle and place them, there'll be random numbers in each of them. So for example, one dream could have 3 2s, a 1 and an ace and a 3 in it. It'll be a 1 whenever it's finalized. And so in that dream, you of your cards that you're guessing, you can only use the 1, the 2, or the 3 to try to what's called be the leader of the dream. You either want to be the leader or be unspotted. If the person that's secretly a sheep guesses the same number as you, you're spotted, and you have to flip over a nightmare track card. That it's a small deck of 6 cards. That if the card you flip over is the first one in the track, then it stays there. So you have a chance to flip over and not actually start your nightmare track. It's just the anticipation of it will be fun for people, and then you have to put that card on the bottom of the deck though, so it doesn't change the order. So you'll eventually get to number 1, and it'll start snowballing once you start being spotted and you get the first card, because now you have less cards and it'll go faster, especially when you get towards the end of the deck. But for the second dream, say you use the 1 in the first dream, you have the number 1 no longer for the rest of this entire round. So the other 3 dreams, If there's a 1 in each one of those dreams, then you may have wanted to save that to help you, because now if there was 3 2s out, there's only 6 2s in that entire deck. Say there's only 1 2 left out in play, that's the only dream that you can guess the 2 in. So it'll cause really fun uh, like anticipation moments of trying to find out who the sheep is, trying to outthink people on what you're going to guess, because you're trying to be the leader in the dreams as much as possible. By there's a key number in each one of the dreams, which will be the center number, and you're trying to get as close to that number without being spotted by the sheep. So if there's, for that example, if one of those 3 2s was the middle number, that means 2 is the key number, and you need to guess as close to that number as you can. So luckily that's 1, 2, or 3 in that scenario. So you can only guess 1, 2, or 3. So if you guessed the 1, like I said, and the sheep played a 2 and other people guessed a 2, they're going to be spotted, and you would become the leader of that dream. And whatever your number 1 is, it'll have a dream state to it, whether it's a farmer dream. Yeah, it depends on whose dream is broken up, basically, on the number 1 that you guessed. You'll get a token for that that gives you a special ability that you can turn into do. And the way that you win the game is you turn in 3 of an item set. So there's 6 item sets with 3 different items in each item set. You have to try to collect 3 from one item set and then say, I want to wake up. And then that turn, you'll basically build 4 of the 6 streams in their entirety like this. They won't be broken up. I can show you the just the generic thing I have built so far, and then I'll go through more of the art for you. But these are like how the dreams would be built the turn that you say you want to wake up. But on a normal turn, they'll be scattered and um, like mixed up. So for an example, like if I take out these 2 things, like this 5 could be here, the 3 could be here, this 3 could be up there, 4, like say this is how this specific dream got shuffled. So there's 2 4s, a 3, a 1, and a 5. But you can see the different colored numbers, they coincide with these tokens that you can get. So this board is almost up to date. There's just one thing I had to change for the action token, this token here, but I still have to update it. But this is what the board would look like in a normal round, where all of them will be like this, where you shuffle those cards and they're scattered. And then whenever someone is spotted, then it flips that number over for the entire rest of the dreams, which these are the old cards without any art on them. I don't have the nightmare version on these yet, but basically it goes from a dream state and then all the 2s after the dream. So say for example, someone got caught in this 2 here. All the 2s that are remaining on the board get flipped over to a nightmare side, and that means when you get spotted in that if you guess that number in the other dreams and you're caught, then you have to pull 2 from the nightmare track instead of 1. So it starts shrinking your own options as well, but you already guessed that number at least, so it's kind of a balancing thing, which is cool. You've already used the number 2, you already had to show a nightmare track card, you don't have the number 2 anymore, so the fact that all these other ones will be flipped over to a nightmare is actually more beneficial to you for the other players getting caught. And this is a game where you can work with people or just completely be out for yourself kind of thing. So, but this is the base idea with these abilities. I was playing around with these action cards, but I think it's going to be too much. But let me go and just show you the rest of the actual characters art here. So this is the adrenaline junkie. Then we have the space scientist. You can see there's always a happy sheep in all of the dream states, doesn't matter where they are. There'll be very random situations too whenever we get to the nightmare cards as well. Since this is a dream and nightmare game, nothing has to really make sense. That's why there's sheep in space and they're standing on their 2 hooves. Then we have the magician, and you can see he's with 3 sheep performing in front of a crowd. Oops. Then we have the farmer, who's just on a farm with his little pickup truck and his sheep buddy. Then we got the doomsday prepper in their underground silo, and the words are scattered like this because if you're something I just learned recently, my artist Pedro let me know that most people can't read in dreams, which I didn't know that. So this is a cool thing. If you start with the first letter and the last letter of the actual word, people are able to still understand what it says. So obviously the bottom one says silo, but it says underground silo. But it's a cool little thing I didn't know about even dreams, let alone this like mechanic for writing scrambled words. And then we have the bellhop. So you can see even the numbers are kind of messed up because it's a dream. And then, like I mentioned before, if I'm going to show the nightmare cards now, so there is bloody, cartoon gore and stuff. So, and we have 6, I believe, 6 or 7 of the 13 sheep done so far. So let me bring those up for you now. I'll bring them up one at a time. The first one we have, this is Choppy. So it's a lamb that's cut in half. It runs around and hunts people, as you can see. So each one of these um, pieces of art as well, a lot of the times you'll see either the sheep or the dreamers looking towards the camera because you're there in the dream with the bellhop. So that's Choppy, and then we tried this. You'll see it better in some of the other art, but you'll see the background we like because I'm trying to invoke a kind of a feeling where in the nightmare cards it's forward focused instead of the full scenery. So like for example, you see the whole scene in this dream because it's a dream. Like you're taking in everything and like getting a happy sense of like this little scene here, which is really nice and simple. And then when you get to the nightmare version, everything's forward focused. So you'll see the crazy background is to kind of make you feel panicked into what's focused, like it's coming at you. Okay, and that's Choppy. Then we go to Grazula. Grazula, who's our vampire sheep. As you can see, he's stuffed the he only eats grass-fed humans, so that's why he's stuffed his mouth with grass and chopped off his arm, and now he's gonna eat his arm. Little scene here. So again, you can only see like the forward focusing and the background, and there we're playing around with different color schemes as you'll see in the rest of these. Then we got Miss Sheary, which is kind of a nod to Misery and uh, Kathy Bates, but this is Miss Sheary, so she's crazy. She wears and eats people's toes and fingers. She's pretty crazy. And then we got Shrink, which is what you should see in the thumbnail as well for this video, who's like the closet monster. He can grow bigger or smaller. The smaller he shrinks, the bigger his shadow can be, his like demon shadow basically. So, but again, this is my favorite one I think of all the art because I love how it's just the doorway and then you get the crazy like trippy kind of background with just the terror of it. And this is my favorite artwork too. And there's no gore, which is pretty interesting. But I love this art. This is such a good piece of art Pedro did. All of them are good, but this is my favorite one. I don't know why. I just love the lighting and everything. It's spot on. It's nice. Then we got Swoley. So he has no legs, but he kind of floats really slowly. But he caught the adrenaline junkie, as you can see, and tore him up. He's very terrifying eyes up here and teeth. And then the last one is the Woolly Spirit instead of the Holy Spirit. And he's got the sacrificial lamb or his followers, and they're throwing the space scientists out into space. So you can see like it still shows the planet, so you can understand that she's out in space, and then it has the crazy kind of background behind it, which is really nice. So this is still very far from anywhere near done. I still have to play test and yada yada yada. All the games still need a play test. Even Warp Drive, which I've been working on the longest, it still needs tons of work. And I kind of showed you briefly the changes that I've made, and when I had opened up Tabletop Sim real fast. But I just wanted to talk about the last iteration of the race board was this, where I brought the cannons back in just to make it so if you traveled in the fastest route, they got to shoot at you. But I keep running into the same problem over and over again with the race format, and that is one person gets a really big lead, and then there's no interacting. They just don't. That player doesn't have to interact at all. And then I tried some kind of unique things about uh, people being able to take shortcuts. I play tested this with the game designers, which I have been on every Monday, and basically this version of it was, and also was a deck builder this time too. The deck building part, they didn't dislike that part. They disliked how disconnected everything felt, where one person got an unbelievably massive lead. These satellite cannons didn't even matter to them. They were so far ahead, they just went and took the longer route each time, too. They didn't risk any damage. Um, yeah, just kept having this problem over and over again. And I'm trying to learn and grow as a game designer because I have never designed a game before besides the ones I'm working on. I've never completed a design, I should say. So I'm just trying to think. I wanted to keep the race idea still. I wanted to keep the core idea. So I wanted to keep the race idea that I really like, the idea of being able to race and shoot at people and engineer build your ship up. So I was just trying to think of different ways to do that, but every time I would bring it to the table in this format, the last couple times, there's just a unbelievable distance between the players. Like I think the last time I played with my friends, all four of it was a different board, but all four of the people playing were in different quadrants. They were that far apart, and it was just very strange and frustrating to see that. And it's nothing that they did wrong. They were playing the game. But since it's such a consistent thing, I was like, I have to try and think outside of the box to try to fix this problem. But I need to figure out if what I'm trying to do doesn't work on a big board like this, because the racetrack's too big for the biggest issue. It should be a much smaller track if I'm going to try to do what I'm trying to do. So that part I understood. So if what I try next doesn't work, then I will build a very small track where that is you'll be able to do that. So there's going to be tons of interaction if you're doing that. Um, but I had a really unique idea basically where I keep racing as a theme, but it's not a standard race. So you can see this is what the board is now. So that last thing that I was just showing you is what the last iteration of the game was. And now this is what it currently is that I'm going to test. And this is just something I want to test because I had an idea that I don't really know. Um, I don't know if there are other games like this in different formats that don't have a race theme, but the idea is still keep that core thing where you can engineer your ship to get stronger. You're still racing. The race is wildly different in this. Obviously, there's no loop. What the race is you're trying to collect these victory points, and there's 3 different cards you can collect victory points from, and you can lose one, so you have to manage your damage as well. You're trying to win. There's only 9 rounds in this game as well, which is something I'm really happy about. There's 9 rounds and then the game's over. And I'll explain how the first round would go, and then just kind of run you through what the second and third round would be. Um, But basically, at the end of each round, the last person to be the furthest ahead. So, say these two were like this. Whoever was the last one to move into this column would be first. They would be the person that would be considering first. So they would get this little chip toe. We'll just say it's Sal for this example. And then he would be awarded this core crystal. So he would get 3 victory points, and he would gain this Not My Day card, which is like a defensive deflection. Um, so he would get that and everything. There's not a total number of points that you get to win. It's just at the end of the ninth round, you are going to, um, depending on where you are in that ninth round, too, at the end. So if you finish in this front, the furthest column ahead, you take no negative victory points. But say this is how the board ends, like this. For whatever reason, this is how the board ends. All of these players, for each column after the first one, they would lose 1 victory point. So Sal and Darkseid would lose 1 victory point, Terminator would lose 2, and Ego would lose 3. So then you would add up all your victory points, and then whoever has the furthest wins the race. They get the go to the finish line the fastest. Basically, these cards come into play on the ninth round, and it says finish lines ahead. So it'll take up, there's one for all of them here. So it just represents that this is the end of the race. At the end of this round, you're going to be crossing the finish line. So the victory points means who crosses the finish line first. So, but you have to manage your damage on your ship. So just ending a round in one of these first 2 rows, you're going to take 1 damage. At the end of the round, you can only take 6 damage total before you take one of these ship damage card, which does a lot of negative things for you. So it'll be an um, interesting idea to play out, to see how people receive this as a racing themed game, but it's not an actual loop track race. I'm curious to see how this is received, because it is drastically different from the loop style race, but nobody can get really far ahead in this. It'll be very hard to get ahead in victory points by a great margin, because you do have to worry about the damage of your ship. So seeing people play different cards to build 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 up success is going to be cool. And then the thing I like the most here, I'll just join the purple team for Ego. Put these cards in my hand. So the very first round, I can show you the card. Very first round is you're going to take this. Everyone has the same 6 starting cards. There's only 6. There's only these 6 abilities in the game for the cards that are in the deck. You'll take the 6 cards, and then you'll draw 3 cards as well. So you're going to have 9 cards total for your first 3 rounds. These are the only 9 cards you have for the first 3 rounds. And it's a programming game now. So the way that you play out your turns is you're going to play for the first turn. You would only have your left warp drive active, and you're going to play 3 cards face down, and it's going to be activated from the bottom card to the top, but you're only going to play 1 card. Then the next person in order will play 1 card. So everyone will get to do their their actions, but you have to decide how this is going to happen. So, for example, um, ludicrous speed would be a good one to have towards the end, because it lets you move 2 spaces and repair one of the damage. There's only 2 cards in the game that let you move 2 spaces, which is this ludicrous speed and then also these hoping missiles. So this is a good one to be the last one you turn over the turn, because it lets you repair a damage as well as move 2 spaces. So a good one to have activate first is maneuver. So let's just say we did this for our first 3 cards. So everyone would do this on the first turn, and then one at a time you would actually move, reveal a card, perform the action, and then the next person would go. So maneuvers are really good one to do early in a turn, because this second ability only happens when it's revealed on the table in play. So you get to move 1 space. So we'll just move everyone. We'll move everyone back here. So we'll just say I'm Ego, who I'm sitting in front of. I get to move one space, and you can move octagonally, so you can move all 8 spaces around you if you're in the center. So if I was here, I can move any of these spaces that doesn't have another spaceship in it or the cow strut. I guess I should show that real fast too. The beginning of each round, uh, one card for each of these will be flipped up. So this one goes 1, 2, 3. This one you would actually roll dice for, and this is blank. So 2 blank spaces that are just discarded, and then 2 that have actions. But for example, these Calstroids, you cannot move into their space unless you're Terminator, because that's her special ability. She can move through it, and they don't do damage to her. Anyone else though that got hit by this as it was moving through would take a damage and move back a space. So there's just a little positional thing. But now, just for example, if this was the first turn, Sal only can move to space 8 or space 6. Unless Ego moved first and did that, then he could only move the 2 or 8. So he could be in a really bad space on the first turn. So something else you can do is you can play you can use an accuracy card, which I played here. You can use this card to shoot and kill a cow instead of shooting an opponent. So let me just do that. And then there's these info cannons as well. You would roll 3d20s, so you would roll these, and then whatever numbers it lands on. So 6, 10, and 18. There's no one in those spaces. But if a spaceship was in one of these spaces, then the player that's in that would have to show their 3 cards after they play them before the other players play theirs. So they get to see their programming for the turn. So it'll be a big deal, especially later in the game. It become a bigger deal. On turns 8 and 9, you're going to have multiple warp drives active. So you have multiple columns here. But each person will perform their 3 cards on the first turn, and then whoever's the furthest ahead. So just for example, if this ended up being like this, then Darkseid is clearly the person furthest ahead. He'll get the first token, and he would gain this core crystal, and he would just keep it over to his side basically. And he also gains this, so he has a defense versus a rocket or a regular attack from the pew pew card. But then the end of the round would happen. Uh, these 3 ships would take 1 damage, Darkseid, Ego, and Terminator. And then the very first thing that happens on the next turn, to implicate that you're moving forward and it is a race, everything would move back 1 space. So this would move back, this would move back, everything would move back 1 space. So now the new turn starts. Why did that not click in? There we go. Now the new turn starts, no one's up front. And now the repair phase happens also after that. So now Sal would actually get to repair 1 damage because he finished in that column. So there's little things you can do to kind of plan ahead, to manipulate, to just try to get yourself in a better position. Because if you're trying to set yourself up for a better third turn or second turn based on the cards you have. So like I mentioned, you have to play these cards for the first 3 turns, so I don't get to draw any more cards. So say my next turn, I would 100% want to do something like this. I should do a ram first. So you right out the gate, my first card, I would get to shoot. I would get to roll these 3 d20s and try to shoot. I shoot 3 rockets. So I shoot 12, 14, and 3. I actually blow up the Calstroids because I hit that, and I hit Terminator. She would take 2 damage. These rockets do 2 damage instead of 1, like the pew pew mechanic does. Pew pew lets you move 1 space, and then you can shoot 1 person that's in your row or column, and they just take 1 damage, and then you gain 1 of these continuum core. Once you get 3 of these, you turn them in, and then you get awarded this, which gives you both of these. So there's a slower way to try to gain victory points where you're not taking a lot of damage up front if you want to, which is using these cards, because you can just stay behind people and shoot them and gain a victory point whenever you do that. But you only start with one of those in your starting hand, and then you draw 3 random cards. So like you can see, these I didn't draw another one. So that plan may come to you depending on what you're drawing as well. So anyway, you would perform these 3 cards. Oh, this is, I'll just explain what these do, I guess, as well. So RAM is you get to move 1 space, and if you move, this is the only time you can move into another player's space is with RAM. So say I wanted to move from Ego to Dark Side Spot, I would use the RAM card to do that, and I get to move him back a space and move myself there. So then I would become first. And they also take 1 damage when you do this. So Dark Side would take 1 damage. So now I'm positioned up here, and then when it comes to the last one, the warp cards are called Wee Arp, is you basically drop a warp in your own section, your own space, or any of your adjacent spaces. So say just for the sake of it, I'm the last person to go for the turn, and Darkside moved to here. When I play my warp, I can play it under him, and then he has to roll 1d20, and he's automatically moved to that location. I rolled a 20, so it didn't hurt him. But just for an example, you could roll 14, and he's moved right next to me. So you can have anything happen. Um, so your programming is very important. So you may have done this one second instead of third because you can't move with this one unless you put it under yourself. So the way you program these cards really matter. And then just for an example, the last turn, I only have these 3 cards. So I would have Ram, Warp, and Ram. So I may have wanted to program the first turn a lot different. So I didn't have so much of this in there, but it's also not bad because Ram lets you hit someone, do damage in a small area, and hopefully take over first place when you do that. And then warp can also be a defensive way to kick someone out of there if they roll poorly. But just for example, now say it's turn 4. So sorry, turn 1 you do the left warp drive column. Turn 2 you do the middle warp drive column. Turn 3 you do the right one. And then when it gets back to turn 4, it's only the left one, but now you draw 3 cards and you can replace one of the cards inside of your warp drive column. So say I discarded this for its second ability during the any of those 3 turns, because this one you can do anytime as long as it's face up. It doesn't have to be the active column. So say I discarded this up there. So now I have a vacant spot no matter what, so I can just put something in there. I could put another one of the maneuvers in there. I could try to go for more speed to repair damage, or I can go for rockets where I can move and hopefully do a lot of damage. But I can't change the location of it. It has to go where the missing piece is, so it would just go down to here. If the maneuver card wasn't discarded, and say I wanted to discard the Pew Pew card instead, then whatever card I put in there would go into its section. So each turn you're going to be able, so the turn 5 would be the middle one, same thing. So the ones you don't use, they're discarded. And then next turn you just draw 3 cards again. And you have the same scenario. You can replace one of these cards if you want to, you don't have to, with one of these cards. So for example, if I was consistently doing pretty well with the staying in front line and not being overwhelmed with damage, maybe I would want to put the maneuver in over the warp. So let's just say I did that. So it's unfortunately the last card in the column, but you already have one here, so it's not that big of a deal. So you get to reprogram your rows every turn, just one card, and then when you get to turn 7, it's the same. It's the same thing. It's just the left column. You draw 3 and you replace 1. But when you get to turn 8, you're actually going to be activating both of these columns, the middle and the right warp drive column. So then you would still only draw 3 cards, but now you can replace 2 of them if you wanted to. So for example, I could replace this one from this column with a pew pew, and then I could replace this one with a pew pew. If I wanted to do that, I could do exactly that. Or I can just replace none of them or one of them. And then finally, the last turn, turn 9, you're going to do, as you can see at the top, you actually activate all 3 of them. So again, you would discard your previous turn cards, you would draw 3, and then these are the 3 cards that you could reprogram into your build. Oh, and something I forgot to mention, whenever you are done reprogramming, so say turn 4, for example, we'll just do that one. For example, say I reprogrammed, let me just put these out there actually real fast so I can show you the example. Say turn 4, I reprogram, put the maneuver card there. Whenever you're done putting the new, you're replacing a card, sorry, not reprogramming, then you get to pick up your warp drive column and then you get to reprogram it in the order that you want. So you get to change when these come out. So for example, I could do this one first, I could do maneuver second, and I could do this one third. So they would be face down again since you reprogrammed it. And you get to do that every time. So for example, on turn 9 though, after just say I replaced cards, so I'm already done, you would actually pick up all 9 of your cards to your hand. Um, and then you get to place them down 3 at a time into your columns face down again. And that turn, you're going to pick one column to be powered up, and then you're going to complete that column. So we'll just say that we completely change it up. So I'll just keep them face up so you can see what's happening. So say this is what we did for our first column. And then you reprogram the second column. So let's just do this one. So now I reprogrammed all 3 of them. They're all different now. I believe they're all different. So then you would perform, everyone would perform the left column first. You would do one at a time. And then once they're all done, then everyone would perform the middle column. And then you would do the last column as well. Once the last column's done, that's the end of the playing part of it. Then you're going to, like I mentioned, for example, if this is how it finished, turn 9, we wouldn't lose any victory points for being in the furthest column, but Sal would lose 1 victory point, Terminator would lose 2 victory points. And you're probably like, why would people be that far back on the last one? And it's usually because of these warp cards. Like if you play a warp card towards the end of a turn, or if you say you played a ram card and you put Sal back here like this, you can't move into this space, you can't move into this space. So now he needs 2 spaces just to get back to the front line. So your cards, the way that you manipulate things will be unbelievably important. So for example, I may have wanted to use this card here instead of there. So I may have done that if I'm actually thinking about how I want to finish this round, because at the end of the round, the damage for the end of the 9th round, I haven't decided if it's going to trigger. I think it will still. So if you have 5 damage, you still have to be aware of that. So you're actually managing your damage still. But I don't know if that's going to be true or not since it's the last one. Because the damage actually moves you back a space. So if he took 1 damage from this and then he moved back a space, he would actually lose a victory point for that. And 1 more for that, so he'd lose 2. So I'm trying to figure out that kind of stuff for it. But that's the gist of everything here. So then you would just add up all the victory points that you have, subtract any points that you may have for being damaged, or depending on the column you finish in. But interested to see how people feel about this, because it's a drastically different That's why I keep saying it's a race theme instead of a race game for this iteration, at least, that I want to try. And I haven't given up on the race part of it. I just thought of this idea as a way to solve the problem I kept having with that one person or multiple people being so far apart from everyone else. The whole point of what I'm trying to build is people are constantly interacting with each other. They're shooting each other, they're ramming each other, things of that nature. So I'm hopeful that this idea will be well received. I'm sure it's going to need tons of like small adjustments if it is something that people respond to and actually like the idea. It is very different from what I had originally planned, but I genuinely like the idea because it does feel unique for a racing theme, not a racing game. I'm sure there's games that have similar boards and movement, I'm assuming, but I still think um, this fits the space theme very well still, where you could still have all the rockets and everything like that. The ramming would make sense because you're not in a car, so they could come from here underneath your ship and knock you backwards. So it still makes sense that it's a space theme. Smaller board, which I like, 20 spaces, so I could utilize the D20s. uh, this is something I'm kind of curious how people will like or dislike. If you roll your own space, you get to re-roll that specific dice. Um, but this one at least lets you move two spaces. So if you think you don't have good cards for this turn, or you kind of loaded up the other two columns you're trying to, maybe you decided to retreat at the end of the turn, knowing you weren't going to finish in first. So then you can at least at the shift phase fall back here and then repair a damage for free. So um curious to see how people receive it. I think these little action cards will be um, interesting to hear people's opinions on these as well, because it's just a little event that happens for each one of the rows at the start of the each round, and none of them are like overpowering or brutal, but they're important. Some of them I haven't even got to them yet. Some of them are good though. Some of them are the continuum core pieces. Some are I'm not finance. Yeah, so there's some of them are good. Some of them be the actual victory point pieces that you can build into these other pieces. There's only 6 of these total in here. But then there's also regeneration ones where if you run it over, you pick this up and you heal a damage. So there's half good, half bad, and then there's a decent chunk of blank cards, which I think there's 14 blank cards. So it's an interesting idea that I'm going to be playtesting today. It's 4:34 a.m. right now. In about 5.5 hours, I'll be playing with the VPT group on you can see I signed up first for this, so I get to showcase the game for probably 2 people plus myself for the first game, so that they'll do 2 games at a time. So me and Dickie will get to have a couple people in our game to show it and get feedback, um, which I'm hopeful for. I updated all the boards are really simple now as well. Um, Everyone's got new abilities. Sal can use the Ram Slam card to move an additional space instead of just being one. If he does that, then he also takes a damage, but that'll still give him a board positional advantage, which is nice. Dark side is when you fire those the hoping missiles, not homing. He fires 4 instead of 3, so he would roll. Excuse me, he would roll 4 dice instead of the 3. So he has a bigger range to hit people with that, which is nice for him. Moo can go into the spaces. She can even end in a space with the Calstroid. She's the only one that can do that. And if she's here and this thing moves into her, she does not take the damage either. She can just occupy the same space. So that's her abilities. And then Ego turns 4 through 9 he, instead of drawing all 3 cards from the top of the deck, he can go into the discard and take any amount of cards he wants up to 3. So he has options. Obviously, he would only need 1 that he wants to program into his column, but he would draw 3 to his hand, so you don't know what it is when he programs it face down. And then yeah, so he'll be able to get specifically what he wants more than other people. He could also draw 2 cards. Say he wanted to draw these 2 cards to his hand and then just randomly take 1 card. So then he drew. Oh, I did it from the wrong deck. Whoops. And then he wanted to draw 1 card. He could do that. So he took both of these cards from the discard pile. So he's leaning towards wanting one of these, but then he draws one more that may not have been in the discard, and then he gets to pick one that he's happy with. And then last thing I forgot to mention is whenever you collect 3 of the core crystal cards, then it's upgraded to the core energy, which you can see is the highest victory points. And once you get that, you actually get to add 1 permanent card to each one of your columns. So you'll have 4 cards in your columns, which this is going to be hard to get. So that's why it's such a big reward. Because the amount of times you're going to have to manage your damage in those 9 rounds should be pretty significant. I don't think people are going to be. You may get focused on for a round if you are the first person to win like the core crystal, so the next round they may focus on you. So you may want to just immediately decide, okay, round 2, I already won 3 points. I'm going to try to move backwards and repair some damage, and then hopefully get some cards like Pew Pew where I can just shoot. Like if you got a turn 1 core crystal and then your second turn was this where you uh, yeah, if your second turn was this, if you drew one of the Pew Pew cards from the 3 random cards that you get, then you could just move back for the turn and just fire at other people, and then when the shift phase comes, you move back and you repair 3 damage. So you can try to really set yourself up to kind of bob and weave, get in there close, and then just try to make a move. And then say like this is the third turn, you may start off playing the warp card on yourself, so you can try to move really far. So exactly. So I moved from 3 to 20 with that roll, which is great. Now you set yourself up for the remainder of the turn. Something else I didn't mention is the only thing you can't do for the only other thing you can't do. You can't move into a space with another ship unless you're playing a Ram Slam card. You can't move into a Calstroid space unless you're Terminator. And then the other thing is you can't play a card with 2 movements, so the Hoping Missiles or Ludicrous Speed, and you can't move into, so say I was in space 20, you can't move out of 20 and then back into it. You can never move into a space that you already were in for that turn, for that action, I should say. So if I did Ludicrous Speed and I had to go here to here, then the next turn, if I played like Hoping Missile or anything with 1 movement, I could then move back into space 20. But I can't do it on that same thing to regain the first token. So I could do, if if this is blank like it is, I could do this though. I could move down to 16 and then up to 19, which is something I still have to think about if I want to let people move diagonally or not. Um, because you can't fire diagonally with the Pew Pew. You can only fire in the column and row. I'm wondering if I should keep the movement the same as well. The only thing I don't like for that though is that example I gave in the beginning where if this was the scenario where these 2 move before Sal, he has nowhere that he can move unless he has this card as his first card where he can shoot this thing. Um, so that's why I'm assuming being able to move diagonally would come into play, or just say this is the example. He can move here at least. But yeah. Um, yeah, I'm hopeful to try this idea out. Um, Not giving up on any of the old ideas either. I just really like the thought of this idea, so I built it out. I like this engineering idea too with the programming. Dean and Chris last week from the designer playtest, they're the ones that recommended I look into it, and I did. I looked at a few games like Colt Express, um, and Mombasa, I believe, was another game. He gave me like three games to look up, and I did like the programming idea. Like Cold Express was a really good example of that. Um, that had really fun interactions after you did that. So I'm hopeful that that's what I can do with this here. But always trying to think of new ideas and improve on the game, even if it means pivoting from the traditional race style just for a couple playtests to see how people receive this game or not, this style of game. And then I can always pivot back. And like I mentioned, I can make the board smaller to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish. Because the biggest flaw that I kept having is just everyone was getting separated, so no one was interacting with each other like I wanted. So that's what led me to this. So um, again, just going over Red REM again really fast. So I don't have anything for this game up on the website yet, but I have everything on the Discord. So there's always a whole bunch of updates on the actual Discord. So you can see I post the sketches for the art that Pedro does, which I love seeing when he shows me the sketches. I post them as much as I can. So like there's Shrink, which is my favorite one. But also, uh, the game info, it's still a work in progress in here, but you can see like the actual sheep's abilities that they're going to have in the game. So when you are one of the sheep, that shows their abilities. And then also I wrote like their short description, and each one of them has a quote that gives them more character. So just I'll read a couple of them real fast. Angela, she's very tall sheep, but she has tree trunk size hooves. And her quote is "Squish, splash, bodies go thrash." She loves stepping and crushing people. And then Baba is a black sheep. And instead of the how the song goes, "Have you any wool?" it's "Have you any soul?" She practices voodoo in her the nightmares that she enters. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones of the 13. So please jump into the Discord, have a conversation. Let me know what you think about anything. Um, I appreciate your time as always. If you lasted this long, I know not many people do. So if you did, I really do appreciate it. But I am hopeful for um, the next week in getting more stuff designed and finished and working on all three of the games. I'm not going to be able to work on pillars except for like the format. I can show you that really fast. So just for the format, like the original thing is all hexagons, but printing that for playtesting is more challenging because I want to sleeve stuff. So I just made a card version of the board, which I'll show you here really fast. So the only things I'm doing for pillars right now is just preparing to print stuff to take to Vegas so I can play test with my friends. So it's the same board. It's all card size things for the movement prediction. And I'll just be using dice for the weakness, fear, and grit tokens that are a part of the game as well. That's what those represent there. So I'll post updates probably in another 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. I go to Vegas on the 15th, I believe, through the 23rd. So it'll be a good little trip that I'm looking forward to, seeing friends, eating some good food, playing some games, drinking some beers. So anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. Cheers.